Okay. So all of creation practices generosity, and in turn, we are all blessed. We heard the story that Judy shared about the 5 loaves of bread and the fish, and you were aware that God practices generosity in several ways. He gave us Jesus. That was one of the things that greatest gift. And then Jesus practices it in many, many ways. When the people have needs, he is generous with his time and gives to them, right? Well, what about the rest of creation? Are you aware that they also are generous? I mean, I've made some notes here. As with humans, we are to practice generosity just as Jesus did. We are truly his hands and his feet. His work is for us to go unto the least of these. And he mentions many times that the poor will always be among us, and we will always have work to do. But the Creator's design was for generosity to not just be for human beings, but for all the beings, the plant beings, animal beings, the things that fly, crawl, all of these beings live to give to others. Nothing in nature lives for itself. Rivers don't drink their own water. Trees don't eat their own fruit. The sun does not give heat for itself. Flowers don't spread fragrance for themselves. Living for others is the rule of nature. And actually, it's a rule for all of us. When he created the whole world, he wanted it to be a place where we could give and receive from one another. The term reciprocity is real important because every one of the things that he created, all of us, every plant, every animal, everything has a gift. And that gift is to be shared with the world. As humans, many of us struggle with figuring out what is our gift? What is it that we can give? But whatever that gift is, if you'll remember in the scripture that Judy read, in the hands of Jesus, it becomes plentiful and there's more than enough to give. So sometimes we feel we don't have a gift at all, but we do. And it takes a little time sometimes to figure out what is it that I can offer to all of the world. Plants, animals, they have their gifts already designed in their DNA. They know that what they're supposed to do, and they produce more than enough for everybody to be fed, everybody to enjoy flowers, everybody to have enough food to eat. But we have to practice a way of harvesting that food. In the book that I'm reading, they call it honorable harvest. An honorable harvest means you only take what you need. You don't take it all, because if you take it all, oftentimes plants are not able to keep reproducing and giving us what we need. So we take a portion and leave the rest for it to grow more. And has any of you ever thinned out flowers? I know my friend up the street when I lived in Iowa, she had so many flowers. They were growing on top of each other. And she said, would you please come and take some of these flowers? They had more than enough gifts and they wanted someone to come and get these gifts, the flowers. So I took probably 50 of those and put them all the way around my house. I had so many of them, I could put them all the way around my house. And, then they were able to grow more. So those gifts have to be given and received for more things to grow and develop. So the book I wanted to share, I don't know if you can see the title backwards, but it's called Braiding Sweetgrass. And I'm trying to get it, there's where you can see the braid. Sweetgrass, for Native people that come from the north, my tribe, Potawatomis, Ottawas, more of the Algonquin woodland people, we think of sweetgrass as the hair of Mother Earth. And we braid it, and the braid has 3 different reasons, 3 different strands. One strand is for body, mind, and spirit. And they're all woven together to make a braid. And then we use that braid to light it and have it be a visible prayer up to the Creator. So her book is all about having a relationship with the plants. She's a botanist, and the person who wrote it is Robin Wall Gimmer. And if you haven't read this book, I really encourage you to read it. Let me put a few statements from the back that kind of fit with what we're talking about. In her book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Kimmer brings the lenses of knowledge together to show that she's that there's awakening of a wider ecological consciousness. So the two things she's bringing together is her native knowledge that she went to the elders and asked them to tell her, please tell me, how do I deal with the plants? What is our way, the native knowledge on plants? And they talked to her about the relationship you have with plants. She already had gone to college and got the understanding of, the scientific part of plants and whatever you learn to become a botanist. And she went on any graduate work related to that. But when she got the native knowledge and her scientific knowledge, she united those two so she could have a full understanding of how plant life works. And that is the knowledge that she wants us to celebrate, the reciprocal relationship we have with the living world. For only when we can hear the languages of other beings, plant beings, animal beings, and so forth, we are capable of understanding the generosity of the earth. And we are able to learn about our own gifts that we can give in return. So there's a very famous chief, his name is Oren Lyons, and he's from the Agadawa Nation. And he wrote this about the book. Everyone who cares about the environment, and everyone else, period, should have braiding sweetgrass on their table. It captures the true reverence between Native Americans and the earth, and the relationship that all of us need to be able to survive. So if we take it upon us to have this relationship with every living thing on earth, think how that might change how we handle our environment. Oftentimes we're told in the scriptures, well, man, meaning all of us, have dominance over the earth, and they think it means control. Another way of looking at dominance is looking at our responsibility. We have dominance over our children, not always control, but we have the ability to teach them a way to where they can flourish, right? We take care of them and we're responsible for them. If we treated the earth that way, that we were responsible and took care of it so that it might flourish, what a difference that would make. Maybe this climate change wouldn't be as drastic as what we've been going through lately with some of the storms that have been coming through. And as we know, if we don't take action, these things might become worse. So it's very important. If you haven't read this book, I know Marilyn's read it and Judy's got a copy. Has anyone else heard of this book or read it? Okay, it might be something you want to experience. I mean, I come from native knowledge and I understand that relationship. And I'm very aware when I see birds and I'm thinking about them being messengers. And I'm thinking about the plants and how one time at the temple, I don't know if you've read this one, The Hidden Messages in Water by Emoto, a Japanese scientist. He took this experiment where he took water and he placed it in a temperature that was just about 32 degrees and had all this water. And he put messages like, you are loved, you are beautiful. And he taped it to the water vessels. And the water that had the good messages formed crystals. But he put some messages on there that said, you're no good, you're awful, no one cares about you. And do you know what? That water didn't form any crystals. Now, if it sounds really weird, you want to find that book. It's called The Hidden Messages of Water. But he talks about we are made of mostly water. So you can imagine if a little child is growing and doesn't hear these wonderful words like, you're a good person, we love you, all of those positive messages, that can affect their well-being, just like the water was affected. He said he played heavy metal music and the water was even worse, murky and all kinds of, because the water was responding. So when she talks in this book about the languages of different plants and animals, we're pretty aware of our dogs and how they communicate with us, and we kind of understand their language, even though it's not verbal. But the same is true with all of creation. God's design was for everyone to be generous, for every living thing to have the ability to give. And we all know when we give, we kind of receive a gift in return, don't we? We receive a blessing I mean, so many times when I've given something, I receive as much blessing as they possibly received when I gave that gift. And when people give to us, doesn't that feel good when you receive something? One of my favorite testimonies is when I went up on the Omaha reservation, and we were going up there to minister to a lot of the old people, and they lived in very meager dwellings. She had a dirt floor that she would brush so much that it hardened, and she had walked on it so much. And in the middle was a potbelly stove, one room little place to live with a bed and a little bit of a kitchen in there. And I was going up there feeling like, oh, I'm really doing my duty as a Christian. I'm going to be giving her my attention. And I go up there and I spend time with her and we listen to her stories. And before I left, she came and gave me a basket full of squash and melons and tomatoes that she had gotten from her garden. And I thought, she doesn't have anything to give. She can't give me this food. And I tried to refuse it. But she said, let me give you this gift. Everyone wants to practice generosity. And all the way home, I cried because the gift was so blessed that she had given me out of not her surplus. I didn't feel she had surplus to give, but she needs to give because everyone benefits when we give, the giver and the receiver. And so it is with the plants. When we take those things from them, when we take from our animals, we have stories that animals will come to you when it's, when it's hunting. One of the men folk that I know talked about, he was looking at these deers, and every time he was going to shoot one of them, they were in the wrong position. And then one came and stood right before him and looked straight at him. And he knew that that one was saying, take me. Now, people will say, well, you're kind of building that story up. That's his testimony that God had provided a way for that animal to give of itself, to him. But everything wants to give. Every living thing wants to, every living person, being wants to be able to do that, give. So in our church, we have the principle, the sacredness of creation. The more we know about how our world works, how the Creator designed it, especially this part about giving and taking in an honorable way, the more we are going to be able to practice that kind of understanding that you need to hold the world sacred. That there's so much more to it, that we're not the highest on this. When you look at, I'm trying to think, dominant culture sort of looks at things as a hierarchy, and we're at the top of the food chain. Native people look at it as a circle, that we're all in that circle on the food chain. We're all in this together. We cannot survive without one another. So I want you to think today, as we leave, about the many ways you have been blessed by the creation, the many times that you've taken a walk somewhere and just felt that spirit in and through all things. Maybe you stood on the edge of the Grand Canyon, and I stand there and I looked, and I just thought of the awesomeness of God. And it was a spiritual experience. When I go to the ocean, I'd go to see my kids out in California, and I stand there and see the power within that ocean, within the water. It's powerful. It's God. So today, think of those things. How have you been blessed by generosity? The generosity of people that have helped you and the people you have helped. Thank you.